Good morning. We are live. It is time for Midweek Motivation Live here with your host, Patrick Lee. That is me. Happy to be here with you today. We're going to be telling a story, talking to you about the law of averages. What is that? How to apply it in your life? Y'all stay tuned and you know the drill. We will be back right after this. And we are back. I'm so glad everyone is here tuning in today to listen to the show. Appreciate it every week. The people that come back and download the podcast, listen to the podcast live here on social media, Facebook and LinkedIn. And then, of course, most of you that have watched the show know that we upload this to Buzzsprout later on today, and it gets migrated out to all major podcast platforms. So wherever you're listening to your podcast, you can find Midweek Motivation Live with Patrick Lee. Look us up. You can find us there. Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, any one of those podcast platforms. And you can find us today. I want to talk to you about the law of averages. The show is about motivating you to success in every area of your life. And this law of averages can be used in multiple areas of your life. And I want to talk to you about it today. And I'm going to be traveling to speak in a couple of weeks to a bunch of people at a conference. And we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the concepts in this. Will be talked about a little bit about who I am, where I came from, and other concepts they can apply to their lives. But this is a portion of my story and how it's worked for me, and also how I believe this can work for you. The law of averages. Many motivational speakers and business speakers, very talented, much more well-spoken men than I, much better educated men than I, talk about the law of averages. It's been around a long time. If this is the first time, your first trip into a podcast that might talk about things like this, it may be new to you. And even if you've been in business or worked in a company for many years, you may not have heard about the law of averages. But nevertheless, there are certain laws that are not necessarily all spiritual laws, but they're basically laws of life. We have laws like the law of gravity. What goes up must come down, right? It's pretty much a given, unless there's something that acts actively against that law, like helium or a hot air balloon. Everything that goes up into the air will be pulled back down to the earth using the law of gravity, right? So that's pretty much a given. Hey, Pete, good to see you tuning in again today. Hey, some of this will apply to you. This will really apply to anyone listening to the show. And I hope y'all get what I'm saying today. And I think that this law of averages, just like other laws that we talk about on the show frequently, the law of reciprocity, we talk about that one a lot. The things that you pour out into the world, the things that you give the earth and give to people is what will eventually come back to you. So today, we'll talk about the law of averages, and we don't talk about it as much on the show as some of the other laws. So, but this is one that needs attention, and we all need a better understanding of how the law of averages work. What is the law of averages? The law of averages says that out of the amount of labor, time, energy, money, whatever it is that you put out, on average, there are certain percentages of things that will come from that. Some of you may have heard of the stories of the life cycle of 100 people. 100 people from the age of 18 when they become a man till the time they turn 100. If you tracked the lives of 100 people, how would those 100 people turn out? And the law of averages basically says that out of 100 people, about 8 of them will have died at a young age, and about 20% of them will have some level of success in life and be financially successful. And the greater majority of those people, about 2 or 3 of those people, may have become millionaires and become very successful. But there will be about 70% of them that have went on to live a very meager life. They got a 9-to-5 job. They just worked their life. They did not achieve much levels of success, and multiple things have happened to them. And it's simply the law of averages. And it really is. Out of 100 people, about 2 or 3, maybe, depending on where those 100 people came from, but 100 random people, maybe 2 or 3 have went on and achieved a very large level of success. Many of them have not. And a certain percentage of them have passed away. Well, that law of averages applies. It just applies in your life. It applies in my life. It applies to business. It applies to relationships. It applies to our spirituality. And it does tie into the law of reciprocity. The law of reciprocity is how we increase the law of averages to our benefit. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But whatever it is that you do in life, there's going to be a law of averages that applies to what you do in your line of work. And I use many of my friends as examples on the show, but I also use a lot of other businesses. It really doesn't matter. Well, let me phrase that. It does matter what you do in life. It matters what you choose to do in life. Okay, number one, it does matter. But no matter what you have chosen to do in life, probably the better way to put it, the law of averages can be applied to your life journey, to your situation, to your business, your endeavors, whether you're an author or a race car driver, whatever it is, the law of averages. There are law of averages that apply in NASCAR. And if you talk to a professional race car driver, they can tell you very quickly how the law of averages applies. In the sales industry that I am in the real estate world, the law of averages applies incredibly. And it basically applies like this. If you have a desired result, we call it backwards reverse engineering or reverse math. If you can come up with the desired result, what is the result of your labor that you want to achieve? How many phone calls is it going to take to get the appointment? Or for you to get a listing appointment on a house, for me to win the listing, how many listing appointments do I have to go on? For me to reverse engineer that a little bit more, how many phone calls does it take for me to get an appointment? A yes. So then how many phone calls am I going to make that are actually going to be no? So if I reverse engineer that a little bit more and break it down even more, how much research am I going to have to do to acquire the amount of phone numbers that I need to get to make the phone calls that it takes to weed through the no's, to get to the yeses, to get an appointment, to go on the number of appointments it takes for a seller to say yes to me to list their house. Does that make sense? So the law of averages applies incredibly. If you make 100, you may have an average of 100 phone calls. You may be that person that your life journey, your business model is, I'm going to pound the phones every day. For me to attract business to my company, I'm going to make 100 phone calls a day. And of those 100 phone calls, potentially 6 or 7 of them may give me an appointment. Many times it's 1 or 2 may agree to actually talk to you and give you an appointment. So if my introductory ratio, my intro ratio, or my yes ratio is 3 in 100, then, and I need 6 appointments, a week to get, and I have actually a pretty high average of yeses. Once I get the appointment, chances are very high, between 80 and 90% when I go on a listing appointment, that I'm going to take the listing. If that makes sense to you, those people are going to agree to say yes to me to list their property with me, or agree to work with me as or one of my agents in the purchase process as well. So, but if I need 6 appointments and I've used the law of average to make enough calls, 3 out of 100 say yes to an appointment, and I need 6 appointments, then how many phone calls do I need to make? Right? I need to make at least 200 phone calls to get 6 people to give me an appointment. But if I have about an 80 or 90% success rate on that appointment of people saying yes to me to list their property with me, then it would probably make sense that I need to make 300 phone calls and take 9 listing appointments to go on those 9 listing appointments, and at least 6 or 7 of them say yes. Because on the outside chance that someone does not say yes, I need to have enough appointments set up for me to achieve the number, the desired result. That's the law of averages, right? I'm going to give you another example here, and this example comes from the Bible, and there's a story. The story says, or the title of the show says, right, the law of averages and a story. So in the Bible, there's a story of a sower. Now a sower is not a person that sows clothes. The sower is a person that sows seed into the ground. And we talk about this, seed time and harvest, and the law of reciprocity. But the story of the sower, the person that sows seed, goes like this. And many of you may have heard this story. Many of you may have not. But I think that you will get the law of averages very plainly and clearly from this story. The sower sets out to sow seed to grow a crop so he can reap a harvest. And some of the seed he sows falls by the wayside. What is the wayside? When you're a farmer and you're out there planting corn, cotton, wheat, milo, I don't care if it's green beans or peas, some of the seed that you sow falls by the wayside. And that may be the edge of the field, the edge of the road, the edge of your garden. And it's immediately laying on the ground and it gets consumed by the birds. The seed is just laying on top of the ground. It's not planted deeply. And it's immediately consumed by the birds. And what are the birds? The birds consume a portion of that seed. And maybe it's 2%, maybe it's 10%. That depends on your line of work and how well you sow your seed. What are the birds? The birds are the cares of life. Things that get in the way of you applying your business, applying your trade to what it is that you do. The birds come and they immediately consume that. So basically, that maybe 10% of your seed is automatically lost to the cares of life, and it never even has a chance to make it into the ground to give you a return. And it's just an average. It's inevitable. When you sow seed, inevitably, some of that seed is going to be thrown by the wayside and it's going to be consumed by the birds. It never even made it into the ground. Good morning, Sal. Thanks for tuning in. A lot of people tuning in today, getting some likes and loves on the show. I appreciate that, each and every one of you. Well, some of that seed, also as you're sowing it, some of that seed goes on the thorny ground or the rocky soil, and it doesn't get sown into good ground. It gets sown into rough ground, maybe inner areas of the portion of your field. Maybe some of your field that you're sowing in wasn't necessarily prepared in the manner it should have been. It wasn't tilled up enough. It wasn't fertilized enough, and it's really poor soil. Well, some of that seed goes into this poor soil. It's got rocks in it. There's not very much topsoil on it. And it immediately goes to start taking root. But it goes down an inch or so, and the sun comes out, and that seed, that plant, doesn't have enough deep soil to gain the water from it, and the sun burns it up and it dies. Good morning, Ross. Good to see you tuning in again as well, my brother. So some of the seed gets thrown by the wayside and it's immediately consumed by the birds. Some of the seed goes on thin ground or stony ground, and it may start to take root and look like it's going to bring in a harvest. But then within a very short amount of time, the sun comes out and it burns up that seed. It burns up that plant. The heat is applied to your law of averages. The heat gets applied. And when the heat gets applied, it burns up. Thank you, Pastor Spike. I appreciate that. The heat comes and burns up that seed. When the heat is applied to your life, when the heat is applied to your relationships, when the heat is applied to your business, there's going to be a portion of that can't take the heat, and it's going to fail. And the law of averages tells us that this will happen. It's predictable. As a matter of fact, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. Then some of that seed gets sown into thorny ground, and it may start to take root and become quite a good little plant. But the thorns and the weeds come along and they choke that seed out. Good morning, Marlene. Also, hope you guys are getting something out of this today. The parable of the sower. We call it the law of averages, and it applies to every area of our life. The thorns come along and they choke out the seed. And the thorns are usually the brother-in-law, the sister-in-law, the mother-in-law. Usually it's an in-law. Surely your family wouldn't come along and choke out your dreams, would they? Would they? Surely not. The family comes along, your best friend comes along, some of your business associates come along, and they say, "What? Sales? Why in the world would you dream about getting into sales? You're not a good salesperson. You couldn't sell anything to anyone. You're not even good at convincing anybody to do anything. You've never successfully been married. You've never kept a job more than a couple of years. Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are to try something new?" The thorns and the weeds, they come and choke out your seed. And you just go back to where you were before and you give up. They choke out the seed, and that seed dies. But the law of averages also says that some seed gets sown into the good ground, and it produces a harvest 30, 60, or 100-fold. How many of you would like that in your life? Raise your hand. I know I would. Ding, 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 right? Winner, winner, chicken dinner. So how do we get more of that seed into the good ground? And that comes into how we apply the law of averages to our own lives. How do I do that? How do I apply that to my life? If you are a salesperson, or you're a recruiter, or you're a pastor, or you own a restaurant, you work in a call center, you have a quota for what you do, you're a police officer and you have donuts to eat. I'm just kidding. How do I apply this law of averages to my life? You may be a salesman like I am, and I got into real estate 9 years ago. I was fixing to turn 50, and I knew that it was now or never, and I needed to get into real estate. It was a life goal of mine, and I needed to go for it, so I did. My first year in real estate, I got licensed in July, so I had half a year. My first half a year, I had a route sales job, and I kept that route sales job, which was also commission income. And I had saved that money while I was working my route job and doing real estate, so I would have money to fall back on if real estate didn't work out. And by the grace of God, I joined a team and I started learning how to be successful and applying this law of averages to my business. So I immediately started selling houses when I got this job, this career. And I was able to successfully make it through the rest of that year, basically on the real estate income. And at that time, 9 years ago, my first 6 months on the job, I made $18,000. Huge confession, $18,000. Now, if you take 6 months of the year, right, I made $18,000. That's basically $3,000 a month for the last 6 months of the first year in real estate. And some might say that's not a lot, but $3,000 a month equates out to a nice little weekly amount if you divided it out by the weeks, right? $3,000 a month, about $800 a week. That's not a bad little. That's more than a lot of people make. The average income in Amarillo, I think, is about $34,000 a year, and that was about average my first 6 months starting a new career. So I learned quickly what the law of averages was and how to apply it to my business. And the law of average simply says if I need more appointments to achieve more success, more appointments to go and ply my trade and talk to people, I need to talk to more people. I need to make more phone calls. I need to go to more events. If my average is 1 out of every 6 people I talk to, I actually get an appointment, then I need to talk to hundreds of people to get more appointments. I learned that one of the secrets to the law of averages is that the power of numbers can sway the law of averages in my bent towards my benefit, right? In my direction. So if you lack any part of the equation of what I said earlier, like reverse engineering, the result you need, if you lack education, if you lack experience, if you lack knowledge, those are all things that you can seek out, that you can go and get readily, easily, if you choose to do it. But in the beginning, while you are doing that, you need to apply tenacity and hard work. You need to dig in your heels and say, I'm not quitting. I'm not giving up on this. I will outwork the next guy. I will outwork the next lady next to me to achieve my goals. If you are in a sales contest or a church growth contest, and maybe you're friendly competing against another church, and you both want to win as many souls to the kingdom as you can, and you have a contest for 30 days, and one person has the average of having a great service, and a certain number of visitors come to the service, and a certain number of those visitors become members, you may have a great soul winning campaign, and 9 out of 10 people that visit your church in any given month become a member of your church and start walking the path towards success and faith in their life. Or 9 out of 10 phone calls that you make actually buy your product, or they're interested in your company and they sign up for the service that you offer. Maybe you're a healthcare provider, or you do massage therapy. It could be whatever it is. If you're pretty good at it and 9 out of 10 people say yes to your offering, that's wonderful. But if the new, young, hungry person is in that 30-day competition with you and they have a 1 in 10 average, they have to talk to 10 people to get one of them to say yes. Well, then to achieve the same amount of numbers, they would have to get 90 phone calls to get 9 to say yes. But the person with tenacity, the person with grit and determination will turn around to win, and they're going to make 500 phone calls. They're going to knock on 500 doors. And the law of averages simply says, if I apply more work, more labor to what it is that I'm doing, then I have to win because I've done the work. The law of averages says I will win. If I make this many phone calls, if I knock on this many doors, if I send out this many emails, the law of averages says a certain number will say yes. Some will, some won't. So what? That's the attitude you have to get. But the secret to the person that becomes successful is they learn how to get through the no's faster. What does that mean? If 9 out of 10 people are going to say no, 1 in 10 is going to say yes, then you need to get through those other 9 people quick. Don't let the no's slow you down. Don't focus on the tares and the thorns that come and choke out your seed. Move on past that. Hopefully you can weed those out. Don't spend time worrying about the seed that fell on the stony ground and got choked out when the heat was applied to it. Those people are going to be there. The law of averages says they will. You cannot spend all of your time worrying or majoring in the minors. You need to major in the major things. Some of your phone calls are going to be the phone calls that fall by the wayside and the birds come and eat them up. It's going to happen. Some of those people are, you're going to make a phone call and they're going to curse you. And do you automatically take it to heart, get offended, and then not make any more phone calls? I think that your business would fold up quickly if that was you. If you wear your feelings on your sleeve and you're offended by every no that comes into your life, every no answer that you get on the phone, every no door that's slammed in your face if you're door knocking, if you're out soul winning, if you're making phone calls for carpet cleaning, I don't care what it is. The law of averages says that if you do a certain amount of work, you will achieve a certain amount of results. So major in the majors, not in the minors. Take a lesson as to what kind of numbers you are achieving and manage those numbers. What you fail to manage will manage to find a way out of your life. But the things that you can manage, track your numbers, track your results, track how many doors you have to knock on before someone comes and says yes to your offering. There used to be a Fuller Brush man used to come to our house when I was a kid. How many of you remember the Fuller Brush man? We had the Fuller Brush man. We had the Watkins salesman that sold beef iron and wine tonic that my mom used to make us children take when we were kids and we hated it. And when the Watkins man showed up at the house, we all went and hid in our bedroom and started crying like, no, please make him go away. The Fuller Brush man would show up and he had a brush for everything. And my mom was a sucker for all of those guys. We bought encyclopedias, we bought vacuum cleaners, and we didn't have any money when we were a kid. We probably didn't need them. Mom bought beef iron and wine tonic from the Watkins man, and she bought brushes for cleaning dishes and brushes for cleaning dirt and brushes for cleaning toenails and fingernails from the Fuller Brush man. So that we bought a lot of things from the door-to-door salesman. And in real estate, we have door knocking as a major procedure in some neighborhoods when you're farming a neighborhood. And in soul winning as a child at the church, we had the salvation teams and we went out door knocking and witnessing to people. And the law of averages worked then, and it still works now. Some of your labor will be wasted. Some of your labor will be choked out. Some of your labor will die when the heat is applied to it. But if you learn to apply your labor correctly, a large portion of that will become sown into good ground and reap you a great harvest. Apply the law of averages to your life today, to your relationships, to your business, to your church, to your restaurant, to your friends, to yourself, to your walk with the Lord. Apply that law of averages and spend the right amount of time sowing the right amount of seed into as much good ground as possible and see if that doesn't help you reap a 30, 60, or even 100 times harvest over what you've achieved in the past. Hey, everybody. The final tip I want to share with you today is this. This is also an irrefutable spiritual law. God will give seed to the sower. If you choose not to sow, if you choose not to be a giver, if you choose not to make the phone calls or knock on the doors or send out the emails, it's a very good chance that you won't be given anything to work with. But if you are the person that can be trusted with the small amounts, that will take your activity and apply it the way it should be applied, you will put the effort to the amount of education that you have, and you will move forward and do the work, put in the time, make the phone calls, knock on the doors, send the emails. You will be given seed to sow. It's a law. You can't get away from it. I appreciate everyone watching the show today. Tune in next time, and we'll continue to bring topics like this to you. I hope this has helped you today. I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you, Pastor Spike Maldonado. Great show. Solid principles. That's me, brother. Solid as a rock. That's my goal. That is my goal. I appreciate you guys. Remember, um, courage begins at the end of your comfort zone. So go out there, be courageous, get a little uncomfortable today, sow some good seed, make some good plans, help some people. In Jesus' name. Talk to you later. Bye bye.